Okay, so have you ever walked out of a yarn store with a beautiful luxury or any other kind of yarn hank like this and taken it home and pulled it out to use for your crochet project only to find out, like, what am I actually supposed to do with this? This is not going to end well if I try to just start pulling on some end from this. It's gonna end up in a crazy tangled mess. I get it, I've been there, we've all been there. I am Lindsay with Off the Beaten Hook, and today I'm gonna show you how to use a yarn winder along with a yarn swift to turn this little neat hank of yarn into a cake of yarn that you can actually use for your crochet project. And if you don't have a swift or you don't want to buy a swift, stick around until after the demonstration that I show you of how to use that equipment, because I'm going to give you several DIY ideas from things that you have around your house that you can use instead of the swift that are going to get you to the same end result. All right. While you're here, I would love it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel. It means the world to me. Just you here watching is supporting me, and I appreciate it, and I thank you so much for being here. Okay, so I've gathered all of the equipment that I need, so I'm just gonna go over that with you real quick, and then I will kind of move things around a little bit and do more of an up close on how to attach it to the table and set everything up, all right? So first off, you've got your yarn swift. This is what a yarn swift looks like. It could be wood, it could be metal. It opens like an umbrella, like this. It clamps onto a table right here. You're gonna need a table with a lip that will fit on. And then the top of it spins freely like this as your yarn is getting wound onto the yarn winder. So that is the overview of your swift. And then you will have it in conjunction with your yarn winder, which is this little guy. It's gonna look something like this. Lots of options out there. Again, I got this one on Amazon. Yarn winders and swifts aren't easy just to like walk into a store and find. Maybe if you have a boutique yarn store, for sure they would probably carry it, but they're really, really available online, Amazon, all the different options. So this is what mine looks like. I've had it for several years. I like it a lot. It's gonna attach to the table in a very similar way with this little clamp here. You can even find automatic versions of yarn winders. Mine just winds with a little handle like this. All right, you're gonna have your yarn, and then you'll just need a pair of scissors to use on the hank once you get it loaded up onto the swift. All right, so I'm gonna show you how to get all of this attached. My table is smaller. You're gonna need a surface with a lip on the edge so you can clamp both of these pieces of equipment on. Ideally, you want your swift to be about 3 feet away from your yarn winder so that it can spin freely and not cause a lot of tension issues with the yarn. If it's a little farther apart, that's fine. You just might need to babysit a little better, but ideally about 3 feet apart if you can. Okay, so I'm gonna back up so I can show you how to attach this onto the table. All right, so your yarn swift, you're going to attach onto the side of the table here. I'm just unscrewing this and adding it onto the lip of my table like a clamp. So screw that down and make sure it's nice and tight onto your table. Okay, on the other side of the table or somewhere, you're going to clamp this on in the same way. So opening it up, attaching it to this side of the table, tightening it up on the little butterfly nut thing on the bottom. And that is how you get these set up, okay? So next what you're gonna do is you're going to open your yarn swift. You don't want it to be open all the way because you need to be able to drape the hank over it before you tighten up on it all the way. And so I just kind of leave it a little bit loose. See if we can actually move this over a little bit. Okay, so now take your hank of yarn. You're going to wind it, leaving it into this loop form like this, okay? Making sure that all of the strands are included in this loop. Oh, I can tell already. I hope this one isn't gonna give me too much trouble. Once in a while they get a little tangly, but we will work it out. Okay, so once you have it open like this, You're going to drape it over your Swift, taking the yarn, actually I have to close mine up a little bit more, taking the yarn around the outside of the Swift, and then as you're kind of holding it loose, this is when I'm going to tighten it up, open, 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 and it will secure that yarn nice and tight around the middle of the Swift, and just crank down right there underneath to keep that nice and tight. Okay, so now what you're gonna do is, what you'll find is there's always there's gonna be probably 2 places where the yarn strands have been tied with like a little loop of yarn. One of those a lot of times is the actual yarn tails, but you're gonna snip those loops. Yeah, this one's the actual yarn tail that I'll end up feeding into my yarn winder, so we'll leave those there. And then on this side, the brand that I use a lot, they have their tag attached to this other little snip of yarn. So just find that knot and snip it and take off that little strand of yarn that is holding it into the hank. All right, so what you're gonna do now, here's another one. Just get all those little loops off. Okay, so just kind of babysit it a little bit. Make sure everything's looking fairly uniform. Nothing's obviously twisted or going to cause you problems as it's trying to spin. Getting it all straight. Make sure it's not twisted. Okay, all right. So that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it into my little yarn winder here. All right, so I'm going to take that yarn tail and I'm going to feed it into my yarn winder. So the end of the yarn winder is going to have a little, actually, you know what? I'm gonna switch this so you can see this better. It has this little feeder mechanism, this little metal mechanism. And you're gonna take your yarn tail and you can either just like poke it through this way or feed it like this, so that's going through the hole of that little yarn feeder. And then there's a notch on the top of the spindle here, and you're simply going to put it through that notch. And I take the yarn end and I kind of do it the other way again so that I can keep track of that. That's going to end up being your center pole right there, so you don't want to lose track of that end. Okay, so what you'll do at the beginning is you'll kind of pull a little bit out to start, just so that the tension starts off right and it doesn't start winding really tightly. So pull a few feet out, and then you've got your little handle here, and you're simply going to start holding this gently, wind it around the spindle. Okay, so it's going to start winding it into this cake from the center, and then as you meet the Swift, it's going to just, you can let go, and the Swift is just going to start turning, and you're going to just keep on winding it onto your cake like this. Babysit it a little bit, sometimes just keeping your hand here, being careful the tension stays the same all the way through. Once in a while you might get a snag, like right there, you might get a little snag that you have to just work out. So I just babysit it a little bit. Some people just go lightning fast, and I don't know, I've never been able to get away with that. There's always like 1 or 2 little things that I have to stop and babysit. All right, so here we go. Let's get going. All right, so just gonna slow down. That's the very last little part. And what I do with the yarn tail is I just take it and I just tuck it into the last couple layers of yarn. I just kind of like poke it right in. Now you have this little cake, which you are going to, again, taking care of that center pole so that it doesn't get lost in the middle. You're going to lift it off like this. And there you have this beautiful little cake of yarn with this perfect center pole. Look at that. Oh, that is the good stuff, the center pole. All right, so then what I do, just as a little tip here, is I take the yarn band or the label, and I just roll it up into just a little roll, and I just tuck it right into the center there so that you know what it is and you've got your yarn caked, and now it is ready for you to use. Now, one little disclaimer about caking yarn is that if you do buy it in a hank, it's very common for natural yarns like wool and cotton and different types of like llama and alpaca to come in hanks. And you don't want to cake the yarn until you're pretty darn ready to use it. Because doing it like this, especially if you've never done it before and you're still kind of figuring out tension and how tight it should be wound, it can actually cause the yarn to lose its elasticity, because when it's being stored in that hank, there's no tension on it. So you don't want to leave cakes of yarn stored. You want to be able to use them within a couple months of caking it. So if you know it's upcoming and you want to just cake all your yarn for a project, that's totally fine. But if plans change and that yarn has been sitting caked for a while, you probably want to re-cake it at a much looser tension so that it's not pulling on the fibers of the yarn and causing it to lose its elasticity. Okay, so as promised, here are some DIY yarn Swift alternatives in case you don't have one or you're not interested in buying one. First up, we're just gonna go old school style, all right? Unwind your yarn hank. This option involves a friend or a child or anybody with a set of hands that can hold the hank like this. They can rotate as needed or whatnot, but you can just start winding with your yarn winder or just one end of the yarn into a ball with your hand. Simple, old school way. Option 2 is the back of a chair or 2 chairs. So if you have a chair that has kind of a wide back, you can drape the hank of yarn over the back to where it's kind of held nice and taut over the back, or you can put 2 chairs together and just lay the hank of yarn over the back of the 2 chairs. Pull them apart until you get the right tension between the backs of the chairs. Another option, which just uses your body, just like the hands, is do this same sort of action, but do it over your knees or somebody else's knees. So sit against the wall. This is how I used to do it before I knew anything about a yarn winder in Swift. Just grab your hank, drape it over your 2 knees, pull them apart like this, and just sit there and wind. I mean, you're gonna get a really good arm workout after that. So all those DIY options are perfectly suitable options, might not be quite as smooth as the Yarn Swift is going to work or as quick, but 100% viable options. I'm gonna include links to the equipment that I use in the description box if you wanna check it out. But again, there are so many different options out online for a Yarn Swift and a winder. You can go check it out and find the one that you think will work best for you. And if you have used any of these alternative DIY Yarn Swift ideas, or if you have any other ideas, please leave a comment below and share it with us. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you've never used a Yarn Swift or a winder before, that you can walk away with something that you find valuable. Please let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about how to use a Yarn Swift and a winder. I will be happy to help.